Come on, let's talk 4-H, head, heart, health, and hand.
4-H!
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special podcast. 'Tis the season for Achievement Days, and it's a great opportunity to slow things down, break it all down, and talk a little bit about conflict. And that's what we're here today to do. Conflict is all about managing relationships, expectations, and actions that we all have when we are delivering 4-H programming. And so today I want to talk to you about some tips and tricks through this Achievement Day season and as you're celebrating your awards banquets, and how to have the best 4-H experience when tensions may be high, anxiety may be high, or you just have a lot of questions. So today, this podcast is for our parents and our supporters and our volunteers and our leaders. And I want you to listen up close because I have some gems for you that I think may be able to put a number of things into perspective. Let's talk about what our objective is. And it's very simple, folks. We are upholding our 4-H standards. And we are giving our 4-H members the best possible experience. That's our job. That's our objective. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about educating folks on conflict, talking about accountability when trouble arises. We're going to talk about the best possible resolution strategies. And then probably the most important thing is reconciliation out the other side of conflict. And so how that conflict can arise, how we can manage it, and how we can move forward from it. And that's really, really important because as so many times in our 4-H career throughout the club project year, we refer to our motto as learn to do by doing. So if you're a new leader and this all seems a little bit overwhelming for you, rest assured that we've all been there and conflict arises all around us. And we're here to support you. And we are here to help you navigate through those troubling waters at the time. And trust me when I say, it's not as bad as you think. And somebody else has had the same conflict at some point as well. So listen up, folks. We're going to start with an amazing recap of what our expectations by role are here in 4-H Alberta. So many of you have been familiar with our conflict resolution strategy and how it took a renovation last fall and became official the 1st of October. And we have been working through that revised approach to conflict in order to be able to educate and mediate, to hold people accountable and reconcile in a way that holds space for dignity, understanding, and grace. And so we're going to talk a lot today about navigating conflict with grace and leadership. We're going to give you a few tips and tricks for that. But first, we're going to start by talking about what our roles are in 4-H. And this is coming directly from our conflict resolution strategy. And I'm going to refer to our first expectation is members. And what is members' role in 4-H? While youth are still learning and developing leadership, social, and conflict resolution skills, expectations emphasize that they have respectful behavior, safety, inclusiveness, and accountability for actions. Youth are supported through coaching. That's us, guys. We're the coaches. Restorative conversations and guidance when incidents occur, reflecting the educational purpose of 4-H, which is a big deal. Addressing incidents and resolving conflicts should take a supportive approach aimed at reconciliation, relationships, and growth. I can tell you a really important fact, folks, that by and large, every incident that goes through Case IQ lands on my desk and potentially goes to the Incident Review Committee has very few 4-H members instigating a conflict. And I'm sure that's not surprising to most of you. So I think that's a really interesting fact that the vast majority of our folks that are starting the incident review process are our leaders. So let's go to our adults. Leaders' expectation is that they have a level of authority They have a level of trust and responsibility for guiding our 4-H members and the amazing volunteers that support our 4-H program. They are expected to be brand ambassadors. And we've talked a lot about this in our reconciliation process. And they uphold the highest standards of conduct, complete all training, and serve as role models. We're going to talk a little bit more about what role models mean. They are role models of fairness, safety, and respect. Leaders must address issues promptly and demonstrate conflict resolution skills consistent with 4-H values. And then we're going to talk a little bit about families, because a lot of families find themselves in areas where they believe there is either a breach of the code of conduct or misconduct of any kind. So families, especially parents and guardians, they play a key role in shaping the culture of 4-H. While they are not formally trained as leaders, their conduct directly impacts the experience of members and the program's reputation. Families are expected to model civility. And this is important to note because sometimes in conflict, we get really emotional and we must focus on civility. We need to follow event rules and resolve concerns in a respectful manner. More importantly, families are expected to exhibit encouragement and support for all members by modeling respectful and cooperative behavior. And the last one I'll share is one that has a lot of interface in safety in conflict, and that is the role that staff play. So staff as employees of 4-H Alberta are held to the highest professional standard. They are responsible for policy enforcement, administration, and leadership across 4-H Alberta, and their behavior must reflect professionalism, integrity, impartiality, and accountability at all times. Staff are expected to handle conflicts fairly, maintain confidentiality, and uphold credibility. And that is very important. That is where big decisions can be made because our staff are the folks that are held responsible. And so I just wanted to go through our expectations by role, and I'll tell you why. It was important when we were going through the new resolution process that people could really understand what the expectations were of them when they stepped up to be involved in 4-H Alberta. And so we've referred to this often. We talk about being a role model, and we talk about civility and coaching and mediation and conversations that support all of those things. So I wanted to share with you an example of a role model. And so what I think is really interesting is I was participating at a regional event, and there was a club leader that was extraordinary. They were absolutely empowering. They were high-fiving the kids, and they were really creating a space where there was tons and heaps of learning. There was high levels of competition, but everybody felt safe, and they felt like they could ask questions, that somebody was always going to be there, and that everything was in a really positive environment. And what that translated to is the whole entire parenting team felt the same way. So everything at that regional show was just so positive. And conversely, I've been to district shows and club shows where there may not be that level of leadership or that level of grace when a conundrum pops up or a challenge pops up. And so we look to our leaders to lead by example. If you are frustrated and concerned, then that is the vibe that people are going to get, and it's going to be the vibe of your 4-H club and event, typically. And so I really want to reiterate how important it is that these kids are looking up to our leaders and supporters and volunteers for setting the example. Making sure that you are familiar with your club constitution, your event rules, and all of that is really, really important because when you're in game day mode, Being able to make those big decisions is important. And knowing that you have familiarity with the rules allows you to have the confidence to make those decisions as well. And that is so very important. It also means that people know that you are doing so with great intent and for the best interests of the kids and the program itself, because you are familiar with the rules. So I want to really emphasize how autonomous and how free the clubs are to make decisions that are in the best interests of their kids. I want to just remind you about the 5 components and requirements of a member in 4-H. And this is found in our reference manual on our website. But I want you to think about just how simple and straightforward these member requirements are. First of all, you need to do a record book. That record book is very, very suggestive. So what they are talking about there is that there are 3 components of the record book that we are suggesting you focus on. And read the reference manual to really further understand that. But the record book is intended to be a learning tool to help our 4-H members understand what the costs are for their project, have a little bit of an understanding of how the club works and the events that are included in your club year, and a little bit more understanding about your project specifically. Regardless of its livestock or life skills, either way, that is the intent. If clubs are going to add a tremendous amount of expectation and standards to the 4-H record books, I caution you to think about what the real, true objective of the record books are. We also know that record books are some of the areas where our kids struggle the most. Not everybody loves record keeping, but our objective is that they learn a little bit from their 4-H project. What did it cost for you to operate your club year and your 4-H project? What did you think about achieving your goals as you set out at the beginning of the club year? And those are the far greater objectives to completing a 4-H record book than to have high expectations of scrapbooking or achieving a certain level of percentage. And I really want to reiterate that because it is a tool for learning. Remember that. The second thing is achieving 70% attendance at 4-H club year. And I want to really emphasize to you the importance of identifying what those 70% expectations are. I think it's critical for your clubs to do that because some clubs may be busier than others, but you have to identify what those 70% attendance is going to include. And it needs to be done upfront in your club year. We know that 4-H families are busy and there's lots of sports and other family activities that are happening. And so it's really important that our families understand what the consequences are and that they can plan accordingly. So please make sure that that 70% expectation is well documented and shared at the start of your club year. Presentations and communication activities is a wonderful skill and probably one that we all believe to be one of 4-H's greatest attributes. Remember, there are many ways to participate in communications, and lots of clubs are doing an amazing job of having competitive and non-competitive opportunities. If you're struggling in your club to understand what is the best approach, reach out because we've got leaders that have created some super innovative approaches to communications. And I'll tell you, it has an unbelievable impact in our youth development. From a community service perspective, again, lots of opportunity out there, and there are clubs doing amazing things. Just a little shout out to Prairie Winds 4-H Club here in Calgary, who does an amazing community service by supporting the 4-H Center in spring cleanup. I can't imagine not having them in that role, and thank you so much for what you do. But also thank you to all the 4-H clubs. The important work that you are doing in your communities is truly inspiring, and we couldn't be more grateful, and our communities couldn't be more grateful. And our fifth requirement is Achievement Day. And wow, is Achievement Day ever one of the most exciting days that our 4-H clubs have. And we wish you all the best at creating that space for celebration, acknowledgement, achievement, learning, all the good things. Achievement Day is meant to be just that, a celebration of achievement. It is also an area where we usually have some of the biggest questions, concerns, or frustrations. So make sure you look in the download section of the website. There's some excellent checklists there on how to prepare, execute, and evaluate how great your Achievement Day can be. But this is the part of the podcast where we're going to talk about some tips and tricks. And this is going to be navigating conflict through grace and leadership. And I'm so excited to share this with you because I think that these are some really true life examples of things that we can do or even just think about when we are in a space with potential conflict. Conflict happens. It's never not going to happen. What matters is how we deal with it and how we handle it and how we show our young people how to handle it. Because again, everything that we do, we're modeling the behavior to our amazing 4-H members who will likely be 4-H leaders before you know it. So the first thing I want to talk about is lead with the 4-H mindset and assume positive intent. This kind of goes back to our 4-H's. This reminds me of head and heart, using our head and using our heart. When conversations become tense, I challenge you to pause and just think for a few minutes. Most concerns come from a place of care, pride, or frustration. Maybe all of those. But one thing that usually is not the case is that people want to impact harm. So let's believe that. We need to seek to understand and seek to understand each other. And this is a really big one because often people respond. They listen to respond versus listen to understand. And so the first thing that we need to do is ground ourselves in curiosity. And maybe one of the questions that you can have in your back pocket is, help me understand what's most important to you here. What really is at the core of the conflict? What is it that is most important to you? Is this really about fairness? Is this about member safety? Or is this about a personal opinion? Think about that. Second thing is stay calm and set the tone. This is thinking about our health. So one of our other 4-H's. As a volunteer, your composure influences the entire interaction. You set the tone. So we talked earlier about modeling civility, and this is really important. You need to slow your voice. Think about what you're saying. Avoid reacting emotionally. Man, this is a tough one for me. Give space for other people to speak. A calm, thoughtful level of leadership helps regulate everybody's emotions. It's not patronizing, it's a tactic, and it works really good. Number 3, acknowledge feelings first. The feelings part is really about our heart. And most of our leaders, whether they're male or female, they know that they are going to hit these things with some feelers. And that is the truth. No one ever can be in 4-H without a little bit of heart. Comments like, I see this is frustrating. I understand that this matters to you. Thank you for sharing your concern. And making sure that our families feel heard. It's often the first step towards reconciliation, is just to assure that people feel heard. The fourth tip is model respectful communication. Again, this is a little bit of delivering this level of service through our hands and our heart. 4-H expects all members, families, and volunteers to engage respectfully. And this is really important because no matter whether we are working with our members directly or with our leaders, sponsors, anybody that's at our events, it's important that we are modeling respect. Stay calm. As much as it may be difficult, stay calm. Gently redirect the interaction. I want to work through this with you, and we need to keep the conversation respectful. Maybe even write a few things down so that if it escalates to an incident, you have a few facts that are at your fingertips. But modeling respect is a way to reconciliation. There is no question. The madder that we get, often the less likely we are moving towards reconciliation. Number 5, set clear, kind boundaries. This goes to our health again and integrity. Giving grace does not mean that we are accepting disrespect, but more so, let's take a moment and come back to this. An example of this is if there is not clarity around a rule at Achievement Day, perhaps that needs to be paused, and this needs to be a discussion with the show committee after Achievement Day is done to be able to provide clarity to the rule. Sometimes the moment is not the time to create a new rule or to create interpretation of the rule. So just take a pause and say this needs to be something we come back to. I'm happy to continue when we can speak calmly. Although this might be a trigger for some people, I think it's really important. Perhaps it means that you just have to step out of the venue and have a number of people collect their thoughts, review the conflict, brainstorm some solutions, and come up with what is the best decision. But you can do so making sure that boundaries are protected and that integrity is front of mind. The 6th item is focus on moving forward. And this is something we have to use our head for. Once emotions settle, we're able to shift towards solution. Keep the focus on what is best for the members and the club. And something that I think is really important, I was just spending time with a whole bunch of 4-H members in the last 3 to 4 weeks. And their comment to everything is this what the kids want? What would the kids do in this situation? This is the kids' club. Let them decide. So I think this is a really important one. Keep focus on what is best for the members. Would a positive path forward look like this for everyone involved? And is that a good question to ask? Once you are able to focus on moving forward, you're able to move to number 7, which is give grace. And this is a learning environment. Back to our heart again. 4-H is built on growth for youth specifically, and for all the rest of us as adults, whether we're supporters, volunteers, leaders, or staff. The flat reality is, folks, people make mistakes. I call this the Sully effect. If you ever watched the movie where they landed the plane on the Hudson River and you realize what that pilot had to do to make the decisions he made in a matter of seconds is really quite extraordinary. But it doesn't mean that you do it again if you had the chance. Because what we do when we make mistakes or when we have those extenuating circumstances is we always learn from it. And we learn if something like that happens again, what do we do? Emotions may run high, especially when youth are involved, especially when mom or dad or important adults are there. This is when we need to extend patience and understand where possible. Again, the comment I said earlier about, do we listen to understand or are we listening to respond? And I think that's really important to think about. At the same time, uphold expectations of respectful behavior and do so for yourself as well. When all this is done, we lead to our 8th and final tip for today under our navigating conflict with grace and leadership, and that's know when to seek support. And this is a good indicator of having strong hands for service and health for better living. Volunteers are not expected to manage every situation, but we know that you have unbelievable character and that you do things every day in your professional careers and in your personal volunteer commitments that make a difference in your communities, and they certainly do with our 4-H kids. But sometimes you have to include your club leader. Sometimes you have to include district or regional, and then know when it needs to be submitted and engage with 4-H Alberta to provide some overarching support. And I think that that's really important. Step away if the situation feels unproductive or unsafe, and realize that documentation is your best friend, and that if you need, it is important to make sure that all of that information is fact-based, not opinion, fact. What actually happened? When did it happen? And make sure that it is fact. Strong leaders know when to ask for support, and that's okay. It's wonderful to be able to have the fraternity that we have here in 4-H, because man, oh man, are we a big family, and we can do some pretty extraordinary things. But I think grace is something that we need to really think about and understand what is the why. If you're frustrated at leaders that have been in a role for a very long time, there's a lot of things to think about with that. There is passion, there is intellectual capital there, and there is a love for our program. That doesn't mean that they are old and that their time is done. What it means is that we honor them in different ways. We honor them for their contribution that they have made to the 4-H program, and not to dismiss them, but rather to honor and celebrate them. And that one I encourage you to do. We have key leaders in this 4-H province that have done extraordinary things, and they have been with the Key Leader program since its inception in, let's say the 80s. But one thing I can tell you is that their intention is always good. And it is important to be able to honor those key leaders and those other key individuals in your districts and regions that have done amazing things for the 4-H program. I also want to be a gentle reminder of our why we are doing what we're doing in 4-H. And I have to tell you that when I watch 4-H members learn, compete, work with their projects, there is something completely magical about that. It isn't about where they placed in class. It isn't about how their market lamb sold. It isn't about whether or not they justly advanced to the next public speaking finals. It's really about the journey that they take in their 4-H club year. And that is our why. To see how they improve year over year, how they increase their number of friends, how at senior symposium they celebrate being named an ambassador that has been a lifelong commitment and journey for them to that point. At spring symposium, seeing how their hard work led to a trip of their dreams become a reality. That's the journey. That's the why. None of that has anything to do with the conflict that we see on a day-to-day basis. They're not even involved in it. And I really, really want to emphasize to you, when you feel like things are just awful or that you're overwhelmed, that there is a million things that we can look at that prove why 4-H is the best rural youth development program you can imagine. There is no other program that is setting our kids up for the confidence, the self-awareness, the public speaking capability, thinking on your feet, professionalism, the initiative to engage in conversation with industry, politicians, their friends, teachers, community leaders. Nobody does that like 4-H, and that can't get lost. It's important to think about our why. Here is a 4-H leadership anchor that I would love for you to remember. Lead with your head to understand. Lead with your heart to care. Lead with your hands to act respectively. And lead with health to stay grounded. And folks, I can't imagine that we can't overcome any potential conflict out there with having these tools in our pocket. Leadership in 4-H is an extraordinary thing, and we have the influence to make our young people be even stronger than they already are. And we have an ability to leverage that and build stronger communities. And for that, aren't we so grateful? So I want you to remember a few things when conflict arises. I want you to stay calm. And I want you to realize, is this really something that matters? Is this a minor incident? Is this something that I am going to look like a hero to somebody if I persist with this conflict resolution? I want you to really think about these things, because conflict is what is making our experiences for our leaders that are new to 4-H or our new families want to leave. And that will not be the reason why we have failed. It will be the reason why we have failed our members. And to see any member that leaves 4-H because they couldn't handle the experience, the conflict at a club level or a district level or a regional level, is a really, really sad time. So I want us to really think about the freedom that you have as a 4-H club to make those decisions and to create an environment that is rich with excitement and fun and learning. And if you don't have that, reach out to some of us so that we can help you get there. It's so easy. The kids already love it. That's why they're there. So folks, thank you so much for your volunteerism. Thank you so much for your dedication and passion into 4-H. I am so excited for the Achievement Day season to be here and for you guys to really think about how we can make this the best experience for our 4-H members and their families. And just remember, keep on 4-H'ing.
Come on, let's talk 4-H, head, heart, health, and hands.
4-H!